Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J blog series. It is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, and on Wednesdays we talk about emotional well-being and relationships. And this week, the entire week, we are dealing with the issue of resiliency, or the ability to bounce back and recover from undue stress or even adversity. Recall, too, that resilience means having the mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and abilities to adjust to the sometimes taxing and seemingly perhaps even overwhelming challenges that we sometimes have to confront in our lives. And just as we can talk about individuals being resilient, we can also talk about couples or even at the level of whole families as being resilient as well. So that was actually the theme of some of the earliest work that I did when I came to Canada. It was a core issue that I addressed in one of my first books or kind of booklets that I published with M.J. Wason back in 1999. And the title of that work is Labor Market Changes in Family Transactions. So we studied in depth 25 different families in British Columbia, and we looked at the nature of their family transactions and the different components of resiliency as they related to the issue of labor force attachment and trying to establish some degree of economic security. And so the main analytic focus then was on the different types of transactions in which family members engaged to help resolve their fundamental concerns about their family situations and their work and life satisfaction in general. So in terms of the research, we even developed an original composite measure called the Family Dynamics and Resiliency Index, basically with 20 different statements to which each respondent offered a response from strongly agree to strongly disagree. And so they were specifically asked to identify a major life stressor that they'd been confronting, not just personally, but that had been affecting the family as a whole, their families as a whole, and how they ended up responding or dealing or coping with the major stressor. So the stressor could have been anything from a positive thing like the arrival of a new child to the loss of a job or a serious illness, or anything else that they felt was an unusually significant and important stressor in their lives. And then, as I say, they responded with strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree to 20 different questions, 20 different statements, I should say. And so they included, and I'll just give you some examples. We discuss our goals and priorities for the family with each other. We spent time together as a family. We had friends who provided us with support. Solving problems was difficult for us as a family. We were satisfied with our day-to-day tasks as a family. And then again, they went on and they had all these different statements. And what we learned from the research was that the most resilient families are those that were thriving, even in the face of adversity, had the following characteristics, among others. Now, these are not exhaustive, but these are the main findings from our own research. They had, in terms of their attitudes, for example, they had a shared sense of optimism and a positive outlook. That is, the tendency then to focus on the positive aspects of their situations and being hopeful about the future. They also tended to be on the same page in terms of having shared goals and priorities. A third attribute, they had a strong sense of being a family, as well as a more focused commitment to the family. So they imagined themselves as a family, not only today, but in the future, regardless of the circumstances. And then finally, they also had a stronger sense of control, perceiving themselves as being able to shape events and outcomes. They were willing to trust their own insights and judgments and act with some confidence accordingly. And then in terms of family processes, what we found is that they established agreed upon processes with respect to negotiation and problem solving and decision making within their families. They also, much more so than the less resilient families, they accepted their specific roles within the household, for the most part, viewing their contributions as significant and important. Sometimes quite different, but nonetheless important. They also displayed greater flexibility and adaptability in terms of their roles, in terms of meeting the agreed upon goals and priorities that they'd set, especially when situations got more difficult or more unpredictable. They also regularly displayed more open, clear, consistent, and frequent communications with each other. Communication, still a significant predictor of the health of relationships. And finally, they had consistent contact and involvement with external friends, relatives, or others in the community. And this was absolutely crucial in terms of having these stronger social support networks to their own well-being, as opposed to being relatively isolated or cut off from the outside world. So again, there were obviously no perfect families as such, but we were definitely able to sort of calibrate the ranking of the families in terms of their overall resiliency and kind of general family well-being. And we distinguished 3 general categories based on the research, not just the resiliency index that I just mentioned, but also based on in-depth interviews and a bunch of qualitative feedback, etc. Anyway, the bottom line is that we found that the families, the 3 general categories, you had families that were thriving in spite of the adversity, those that were surviving or hanging in there, as it were, and then those that were struggling and on the verge of collapse in some instances. They were, that is, they were sort of completely falling apart, at least at the time of the interviews. Did money help? Absolutely. I mean, all else equal, right? So I want to qualify the statement. Most of us, I'm assuming, would probably rather have more money than less. Again, all else equal, but not at the same time, not at any cost, so to speak, right? So the point is that the healthier and the more resilient families that we studied also had more widely agreed upon strategies and supports in place in terms of how to help them make ends meet. And finally, if they were struggling financially, and some were, it didn't mean that they weren't still thriving in other senses, but those that were struggling financially also tended to have concrete plans, that is, the ones that were more resilient, also tended to have more concrete plans for the future. Like they knew that they were planning to finish an educational program, for example. And then they also had more extensive external social supports, like having, for example, one of the biggies was having like grandparents around, especially to help with childcare. So not everyone has that luxury, but it makes a big difference. So you can probably readily assess your own partnership, if you're in a partnership with someone, or your own general family situations, to determine in general whether you're thriving, surviving, or struggling. And ideally, if you draw upon the research that I've just discussed here, for example, you could work towards changing certain aspects of your family relationships and family dynamics to help build more resilience and a more optimistic attitude and prospects for your future. So just as you can turn your individual life around, I guess what I'm suggesting is that under some circumstances and with some concerted effort, you can change the future fortunes of your family as well. All right, so that's it for today. And as ever, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives and nurture love in your hearts and dole out hugs in abundance. Hope to see you soon.